talk about some considerations when the other house is across the hallway, because there are some unique challenges when we're dealing with apartments, multifamily housing, and other places where where there's a lot of people, different people living under the same roof and going different areas, different places all at over time. But first, I want to show you that yes, professors actually do work at times. The reason I showed this, besides the fact that yes, I do work and I just don't force my grad students to do the work. Vacuuming, as I mentioned, is a good way to deal with bed bugs. And during inspections, vacuuming works quite well. And so a vacuum is a good tool to use, particularly when you're in an apartment and facility or other type of facility, in terms of while you're checking for them, if you happen to find them, vacuum them up and away you go. Now the problem is with multifamily housing is we often get a lot of different types of habitats in the same building. We may get something like this, where the person in this room, the person in this apartment keeps their place relatively neat and tidy, and right next door we could have something like this. And there's some real challenges to how this might impact bed bug populations. We might get bed bugs in both types of circumstances. Okay. We could have bed bugs in this circumstance where someone is highly reactive to bed bug bites and can have bed bugs occur, and they would know it in very short time. This place might be owned by an elderly person who doesn't react to bed bugs, and yet we can still get bed bugs in this area. However, if we were to have bed bugs here, this area is a lot easier to manage. It's a lot easier to deal with when it comes to control than, say, this area, right? When you're trying to deal with this. As a public health nurse or home visitor, walking into this area, automatically my mind heads to, okay, well, where could bed bugs be if I have to walk into that type of area? And so your level of protection or your precautions that you should take are going to be probably far different than if you were to walk into this area. I still would not recommend that you sit on the couch, but dealing with this type of habitat is going to be a lot easier than dealing with that. So you can see sort of the different things that you have to deal with. And if you're visiting different buildings at the same, different apartments within the same building, you can see sort of the challenges that we deal with. Now, one thing I didn't mention about bed bugs is the fact that they will move between apartments, and we talked a bit about that in terms of hitchhiking, but they will actually walk down hallways and into other apartments. And there was a study by Stereotech, and this was done in hotel rooms, that found that they would even move between walls, common wall junctions, but between rooms. So if we look at these boxes as being apartments, are different, in this case, hotel rooms, and we were to have sort of two floors of apartments here and here, and then each one of these was an apartment unit itself. Then if we get a complaint in this room, for instance, the actual infestation could look like this, or actually look like this. So the infestation could be spread across four apartment units or even more. So we really have to take into account when we do get a complaint, if this is the complainant, if this is a complaint room, you have to start wondering whether the ones on either side are what's happening with these, and inspect them. Now, early in the decade, when we started working with hotels in this problem, when we started telling them that, yes, you had an infestation in this room, but we also have to look at the rooms on either side and the rooms below and above, it took a long time for them to understand that bed bugs could spread in this manner. And quite often, they didn't want to disrupt their business operations. They didn't want to cause unnecessary worry by having to inspect those other rooms. And eventually it came down to, and one of the things that Stereotech found out that was that 25% of hotel rooms adjacent to the primary site, which was the room that had the complaint, were also infested. Early in 2005, when we started working more in residential areas with this pest, one of the biggest challenges that we had seemed to reappear again with landlords and facility property management groups, in that if they had an apartment that was infested, they were unwilling to look at the apartment units on either side, above and below, and we're still having that issue happening nowadays. And it's tough, on that's on the one side, that's the insect side. But on the business side, it is very tough to have to go into other adjacent apartments and inspect for crawling insects. And I would recommend that they inspect for crawling insects, not inspect for bed bugs. But when you're communicating with adjacent apartment tenants. But the key thing is that we need to look at this from a bed bug behavior standpoint, not just a human business standpoint. There is that's an important part to it, but we have to figure out a way to skirt around that and inspect these apartment units on either side and across the hall, because those quite often can be the chronic heavy infestation sites that you might not be getting information about. And yet this one central apartment, the one that's the complainant apartment, is the one that keeps continually complaining that they've got bed bugs in that site. I show this picture because, as I mentioned, Corey McQueen, my graduate student, has been doing work with looking at the ability for bed bugs to detect things like dirty laundry. And I show this because here's a sock with bed bugs on it. And where's this sock going to go? Sorry? On the foot? But yeah, it could. But if it's been worn, where is it going to go? On the floor. And then where is it going to go? In the laundry, yeah. And this becomes another challenge for multifamily housing, because you pick these things up, you bring them downstairs. One tenant might just take everything and dump it into the washing machine, while another tenant might take it and dump it onto the folding table and separate out the lights from the darks, and then put them into the washing machine accordingly. And they could seed the area with bed bugs. And then the next tenant who's coming in, who dumped their stuff directly into the washing machine, put it in the dryer, goes to fold it, pulls it out and puts it back onto the folding table, and lo and behold, you've got nice warm laundry, and bed bugs are attracted to heat. And so, to some extent, not when it gets too hot, but when it's around body temperature, slightly above, they will actually migrate towards sources of heat if they're hungry, and they can get onto the clean clothes, be folded up, and be brought back up to the home, to the apartment. So you can see how there's a number of different systems in an apartment building, where it's just not only the apartment itself, and adjacent apartments, but it's the laundry room. If we have the lounge areas where people go down and meet and mingle and play cards, if it's a senior center, it might be a place where people do community jigsaw puzzles and things like that. Those are areas that can become point sources for infestation spread into the rest of the building. And then we have, from a family or multifamily housing standpoint, we have the silently suffering. And this is a really big problem, because remember, I'm going back to the picture of yuck and me on a picture of me, not just because I feel bothered about that or anything, but no. There is this stigma of bed bugs, and as I mentioned, I've heard a lot of times people saying, well, I have bed bugs, but I'm not a dirty person. And quite often, the stigma will inhibit people from reporting that they have bed bugs. For a number of reasons, whether it's just personal, the question of personal hygiene, or it's a problem of people thinking that, well, because my apartment's dirty, I'm going to have to clean it up, or I'm going to be cited for having bed bugs in the room because my apartment's a shambles, and that becomes an issue if they are not going to report bed bugs. We have the self-isolation from stress and fear that increase, and that causes people not to tell people that they have bed bugs, or of their apartment facility management or property management group. We have fear of loss of employment. I've had a number of cases where I've had people call up that run again, senior centers or daycares or something like that, and they've asked me, I have this person who's just reported to me that they have bed bugs at home. Should I let them come and work here? And it's a big problem, because as soon as they stop working, of course, they're not going to be paid. And yet they need money to control the problem in some cases, or in other cases they need money to afford to wash all their clothes so that they can get rid of bed bugs appropriately when they do the other control measures. And so it becomes a real issue if people are not reporting bed bugs, and they're going into a situation like their employers where there's a risk there. Now, there are steps that can be taken, preventative steps that can be taken, to make sure that any belongings that they bring in to the room or to the facility where they're working can be isolated from other things. And it could be something as simple as lockers, or it could be, as I mentioned, the plastic boxes that we'll touch on a little bit later. But I think it's a real issue that people are not reporting bed bugs at critical times, just because they're worried about losing their job. We have fear of authority with other cultures, and that's a major one right now. And sometimes we have newly arrived people from around different parts of the world. Some of those areas are still based on a sort of a feudal-like system, where the landlord is the person who provides the shelter, and there's not much other major authority in that person's life. And so for them to move over here and to live in an apartment and then to all of a sudden get bed bugs, they don't necessarily want to complain about bed bugs to anyone, and they try and do it themselves. And there's some serious ramifications when they start trying to do things themselves. We also have people who are, whether they're legal here or not, from an immigration standpoint, they may, or undocumented, they may not want to report, even if they're here with a visa. They might not want to report this because they're afraid of raising some sort of concern with authority figures that would then maybe cause them to be deported. There are worries like that in the community. And then there are people who have lived with them in some parts of the world, and so they just figure that, well, we just squashed the bugs and kept living our life type of thing, and they don't really get rid of the problem. They just have this problem existing. Okay, now the risks to landlords and facility property management groups, the costs is a major concern that has to be figured into this. We've had some numbers come from Virginia through Deanie Miller at Virginia Tech, who's shown that some apartment buildings have gone from like a $250,000 in the black type of business status to, within 2 years, $350,000 in the hole, just because of their inability to get rid of bed bugs, just continually having to do control procedures for bed bugs. And so it can be a huge cost. We have lawyers that are now getting involved, and I'll show an example there. Complaints to public health and the questions of residency or occupancy permits. Insurance is now getting involved with this. There were a couple of groups that tried to get insurance claims based on bed bug infestations, and the insurance industry quickly jumped on this. Now, having said that, you can get bed bug insurance, but it can be costly depending on what type of business you have. Property sales are another one, and in some cases where we've had apartment buildings go into the red, they've decided to sell the apartment building. And when they, and in a couple of cases, I know there was recently a court case involved with where they sold the building, and the new people taking over the building set it up and had apartments already rented out, and then within 2 weeks they had the health inspector at their door knocking on their door saying, "What are you going to do about the bed bug problem?" Well, what bed bug problem? Oh, well, this building's had a bed bug problem for the last 3 years. Didn't you know about it? No. So it really becomes a buyer beware. And in the two judgments for this, where the seller did not disclose the infestation, it turned out to be that it was a buyer beware situation, and the plaintiff was the buyer was obligated to make sure they asked the questions about it. It wasn't the seller's responsibility to report that. And then we also have people making demands both from landlord side as well as the tenant side that may or may not be realistic to the problem. You know, bed bugs are what they are. And the way people handle them, the way people perceive them, they respond to them is sort of a big mix of ways that people are trying to deal with them. Some landlords are saying, okay, well, if you move into this place, we are guaranteeing that this apartment is free of bed bugs. So any infestations that you get into your apartment are your responsibility. You have to charge for them. You will be billed for them. And yet, I don't know anyone in this country that, if they know bed bugs, would ever sign a letter over saying that we guarantee these rooms to be free of bed bugs, because you just can't do that. And then what about, as I mentioned, the case where the tenant brings their laundry down to the laundry room, picks up bed bugs within the same building, you know? Now, at the same time, there's still issues around, you know, people bringing in furniture that's infested, bringing it off the street. And we've also had a number of cases where people have disposed of furniture into the elevator of the apartment to take it outside. And the elevator door closes and goes down a couple of floors to pick up someone else, and someone walks on, sees this beautiful mattress box spring sitting there, and so they pick it up and take it immediately into their building. And we've seen, actually, in Indianapolis, there was a case where there was a chair that moved from floor to floor while it was when it was infested, when they were trying to get rid of the infestation. There's some that will charge the tenants for the control job regardless of fault, and that sets up a risky situation, and not from the point of view, I don't want to discuss, you know, well, where does the fault ultimately lie, who's going to pay it ultimately. I think the Attorney General in Minnesota, as well as if the apartment building is supported by HUD, those have already been answered. That the fact that the facility management company is ultimately responsible for getting rid of a bed bug infestation. Now, that's not to say that if there was some documentation that demonstrated that there was something moved into the apartment unit that was infested, that's another issue altogether. But basically, it comes down to it's ultimately, from a property standards standpoint, it's ultimately the landlord or the facility management company that is responsible for infestation. Now, that's from the law. That's already been taken care of. But what I want to do is I want to talk about some of the things where there have been issues where landlords have not taken care of the situation. And there's an example: lawsuits. One attorney, you know, they found another cash cow that they can jump onto, and you know, total of more than $7 million in damages, claims ranging from $100,000 to $3.5 million. Okay, so here are the major risks for the landlords that we really have to, and I think these are far more serious if we were to force tenants to try and do pest management themselves. We've already had cases in the 90s of a cotton poison being rebottled and sold to low-income housing, people who really didn't know what they were buying, and this particular poison, called methylparathion, when sprayed out in the fields, within 24 hours breaks down in sunlight. when sprayed in homes against cockroaches, it never breaks down. It soaks into the walls and then is re-released. And this stuff is highly toxic. It ended up being that several low-income housing properties in Ohio were bulldozed, and in Chicago were demolished because of the level of contamination in these buildings. And you've got to keep in mind, this stuff came in a jar that was handwritten label that said poison, and some of the newspaper claims about what this stuff could do were just outrageous. Like, it would control the cockroaches. Well, of course it would control cockroaches. It's highly toxic. It would control spiders, it would control other insects that happen to get in accidentally, it would control the squirrels that were bothering you, it would control the cats that were, that were peeing on the doorstep type of thing. And that was some of the direct quotes that were coming out of this. Unfortunately, when put into the building, it just completely destroyed the building from a habitability standpoint, and these places were superfunded. Apartment fires and explosion hazards. We really have to be careful with over-the-counter foggers and rubbing alcohol, as I mentioned. The major fires that have happened from bed bug control have been, for the most part, with over-the-counter foggers where people have read the label and then they've decided to elect to use the glug method of pest control, where one glug works, so 2 glugs works better. And some people have put in 9 foggers into their apartment where only 1 was required. But unfortunately, they forgot to douse the pilot lights, and when they released this into the room, it created an explosive mixture, which basically blew the windows out or popped the building off of its foundation. And I think I've got a picture of that in a sec. And then we've also had people with using rubbing alcohol on their beds while they're smoking, or they soak down the mattress, and then they're smoking later on, and the mattress catches fire. So here's some examples of control measures gone wrong. This one right here is an apartment fogger where they put in too many foggers, didn't release the pilot light. You don't get sort of this Hollywood big explosion where the house is completely demolished. Basically, what happens is it builds up, and then when it finally goes off, it's just a compressive force on the inside of the house. So it just goes woof, and it just pushes it out enough that it can blow walls out, and someone could be standing in there and be completely unheard, but the pressure that was built up temporarily popped windows and damaged the foundation to wall contact. This picture is someone who, it's a fire, and this was someone who had decided that they were going to take care of bed bugs by chasing them around with a cigarette and a lighter. Okay, this was a tenant that just got mad to the point where, they decided to burn the little critters instead of using like tape or something like that. Let's get it really, let's go after the real thing, the thing that will really kill them, not just kill them, but really kill them. From a heat treatment standpoint, this type of control method is called total habitat destruction. And this was in Edmonton. The landlord decided to do a heat treatment themselves. They brought in equipment that was not designed for bed bug control. They used direct fired heaters, or the salamanders, or construction heaters, if you will. They're basically a tube about this long, have a great big huge flame in the middle of it, and they put these open flames into the apartment. This picture right here, and you can see them right here, there's 2 100-pound cylinders of propane that they put up on the balcony so that they can run the pipe inside. This person at least was smart in that they had the propane outside, even though it still caused destruction. We've had cases where people have put the propane cylinders inside the house with the heater and then heated the whole lot up to 130 Fahrenheit. So there's a number of dangers in there besides the fact that you completely demolish, you set fire to the place. if you use direct fired heaters in an enclosed area, you build up the carbon monoxide levels, and you can have carbon monoxide poisoning. And I suspect in one of the cases, that was one of the problems, was someone was going in to check these heaters, and they didn't find or they saw that everything was all right, so they went back out in the truck and they sat in the truck and they fell asleep. And then when they fell asleep, that was when the house went up in flames. And then we've had one case where someone's decided to crank up their wood stove really high in a log cabin. Unfortunately, they caused a chimney fire and burnt the place down as well, from trying to heat it up to the point where they could kill bed bugs. You really have to use equipment that's designed for control of bed bugs, and that's either electric, or if it's propane, the heaters are placed on the outside of the building and the heat's ducted inside the building. Okay, so that gives you an idea of what can possibly happen, but let's talk about ways that you can get around the problem and start dealing with it. And there's a couple of sort of rules of thumb that I've pushed forward with a number of groups to consider when you're dealing with bed bugs. For apartment units, and again, we have, I have got these apartment boxes here, four floors, each box is an apartment unit. If you have 5 or more separate complaints of bed bugs in the building, I suggest you go through and inspect every apartment. And, I know that's a lot of time, I know that's a lot of effort, but quite often when we get to more than 5, there's usually some sort of system going on. It could be people working at the same area. It could be the city buses, for that matter. It could be a local movie theater that services that where everyone goes out of this apartment into the movie theater. It could be the laundry room. It could be the common area downstairs. It could be that you have a mixture of immigrant type people living in these places, and it could be that although you're having these complaints happening, it could be that the actual infestation could be elsewhere in the building. And you'd be surprised. We've done this a number of times, and you'd be surprised at the number of times you'd find these hidden infestations. So that's one recommendation that I have for that. And you can find, and sometimes you walk into an apartment and it's quite easy to see that they have an infestation because of the blood smears on the walls where they've been squashing them at night. Again, if you have an infestation or a complaint, remember it could look something like that. So the way to deal with it is, if you do get a complaint, then that becomes the primary, and all the apartments around become secondary apartments that you need to inspect, as well as across the hall. And then if you happen to find that one infested apartment that's next door, then that becomes a primary, and you extend the boundary. And then that one becomes you find infestation, and this is how you get around the problem. And this is how you sort of eliminate the issue. You know how much you have to work with. You know not only what sort of control efforts need to be done, but you also know what sort of preventative measures need to be done as well. For senior assisted living, you might find a complaint, and then you inspect around. You haven't found anything. The one question that you should always ask: is there anyone that you visit in the building? And we know that you get people in buildings, and they're sometimes looking for companionship, whether male, female, or male, or however it's happening. But quite often, what we'll find is that the person that they visit the most also may have bed bugs. And it might be, this might be, if you didn't have that in mind, then it could be that you have a complaint here, and then you have a complaint somewhere else, and then all of a sudden this one starts to complain. And there are connections that happen with bed bugs. Again, bed bugs don't sort of magically appear or move. They're moving from one site to another. And so the idea that particularly in senior assisted, if you have a complaint here, check to see if they're visiting anyone, and if they're moving to another site. Again, the laundry room and lounge are 2 critical areas that also need to be inspected if you're dealing with infestations, particularly if you seem to have spotted infestations happening all over the place. So how do you prevent this type of large-scale infestation? Well, inspections are a major thing that you have to consider. Going in and checking rooms. I know that sometimes people will go in and inspect for cockroaches. If you were to communicate with the technicians that you're going in and looking for crawling insects, and then do quick checks of the in the bedroom is a way, but you have to communicate that beforehand rather than going in and just going straight to the bedroom type of thing. Education of tenants, encouraging reporting of issues. The sooner you can understand that there's an issue happening, the sooner it can be dealt with. Leaving it to sort of alone, festering, spreading will cost more in the end. I've seen a number of cases where lease agreements are now being rewritten or at least revised to deal with bed bugs and things like allowing inspections. Some municipalities have gone, not in Minnesota, but some municipalities have gone to the point where they are requiring tenants to permit landlords into their apartments to do these inspections. So making sure that you can gain access for inspections, making sure that you prohibit activities such as scavenging of furniture. And you know, it's not just the couches or the beds that are at issue. TVs, stereos produce heat, and they can become infested. And this is, in some cases, this is a major change in behavior, because I can remember going through my undergrad, and the way I furnished my entire apartment were things that I picked off the curbside, including the cool stereo and the TV that you sort of had to turn on and wait for a half an hour while it warmed up. But it was still a lot better than what I had in the apartment at that point. But at this point with bed bugs, we really have to start avoiding having tenants bring that stuff in. So that should be spelled out in the lease. Do not bring things in, and what sort of ramifications there are if that occurs. I also recommend to avoid throwing furniture out. This is a touchy issue because sometimes people have used this as a cost-saving measure. If you throw out the furniture, then that's something you don't have to treat. The problem is, though, that if you throw the furniture out, where are tenants going to get furniture, particularly if they're low income? Usually off the street, or maybe they've stored up a bunch of furniture that they've collected over time, and they're going to take it out of storage and bring it upstairs, and it could be infested. So I think it's more prudent to treat the furniture as it stands. Now, if there's a really infested mattress, or it's cut up and it's just really in bad shape, and no amount of chemical or no amount of encasements are going to encase this mattress, then you might want to consider throwing it out. But it has to be wrapped. It has to be destroyed to the point where someone's not going to find it in a dumpster, pull it out, and pull it back into the apartment. I also recommend to landlords and property management people, go out and see where people are getting their furniture, and go to these sites. It could be Bridging, Minnesota. It could be I don't know if the United Way is providing some of this. It could be secondhand furniture, furniture recyclers that they're getting it from. Go to talk to these people and see what their policy is towards bed bugs and bed bug prevention, and see what they're doing. If you go up to them and say, what's your bed bug prevention strategy? And they just sort of look at you like, bed bugs? What are bed bugs? I wouldn't recommend that tenants go to that place to pick up furniture. However, if they come in and they say, well, we have the place inspected, we have the furniture periodically checked by dogs, we ask questions, we do this, we do that, then that's a group that you should put onto a list and provide that list to the tenant, so that if they need to, in fact, go get furniture, then there's a list of places where they can get they can approach furniture. And then finally, there's a number of other things. Tenant move-in requirements. I know there's some groups that have used inspection of goods before things are moved in. Some letter of clearance to say that the goods have been inspected. We've had cases where companies have used control procedures. They've retrofitted a garage or another unit that would then be used as a heat treatment chamber, so that anything coming into the apartment is heat treated automatically before it goes into the into the room. And then we've also had a couple of, in other cities, we've had a couple of companies who will move the stuff in, have the tenant move the stuff into the apartment, but then they do a heat treatment automatically in the apartment about a week or two after they've arrived, and that's as a prophylactic type of treatment. So there's a number of options, a number of strategies, and we'll talk about some of this more after in our smaller discussion groups. But the one thing I really want to point out is currently we seem to have a tendency for dissatisfied tenants to move. When their deposit costs a fraction of what it does to control a proper bed bug infestation, if there's any threat of them being evicted or them having to pay for it, they tend to want to move, and at that point they're spreading the infestation. And what's worse is someone else who might be moving into that apartment might be bringing bed bugs in with them. So I know there's a whole bunch of issues surrounding that, and you could talk about one particular case or another particular case, but bottom line is the more people move around in the system, and the less the measures are taken to prevent it, then this becomes the sort of the main forefront of infestations, not only for that building and for other buildings, but also throughout society and other areas.